All right. Hello, everyone. Well, there's no one now. I don't know who's going to join me tonight, but the beauty of YouTube is that there's always a playback. So let me click on this stream on the YouTube side, and then I will get started. Okay, we are live. I am live. I've got 2 likes already. I appreciate that. Whoever is watching, please let me know who's watching. That's always helpful on this side of the camera. So I'm gonna try to get this done within an hour. This wasn't officially requested. I'll shout out T Riddler. We were in the master teachers chat, and we had a little dialogue going on, and I said my training is in the biomedical sciences. And Mr. T Riddler said, "Well, I don't know what that is. Could you do something on that?" And I said, "Sure, I will. Yeah, I will revisit that on my channel." And I thought that this would be a good time to do it because I just went back to the University of Michigan's Department of Pharmacology for a pharmacology in color symposium. So before the pandemic, they were bringing alumni back to talk to the minority students about their careers and their educational paths. And we just did that late last week. So I thought this would be a good time to do this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what goes into that. I'm not going to go through my 2 first author papers. I'm going to show them. I'm going to show some blog posts that I wrote surrounding all of this, and then I'll wrap up. If people want to read more about these things, the links will be in the description box below, and I think that's what I'm going to try to do. So I'm going to play my intro, and then I'll launch off into my thesis, and then hopefully I can get this done within an hour. So if you come in for however long you come in, please smash that like button. If you're new, please consider subscribing. I don't have a super chat over here, so if something is said that personally resonates with you, please consider making a donation. Well, not please. I don't want to say please. I don't want to beg, but consider consider making a donation to my Cash App or PayPal. I tried to do this on Saturday after the event, but StreamYard recommends that you have a hard connection to your computer. And in some of these hotels, when you try to stream, the connection is unstable. So it makes for a choppy reception on the YouTube side. All right, I'll see you on the other side of the intro. All right. Welcome back to Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar. If you're new, please consider liking, sharing this content, and also please consider subscribing to the channel. I could always use more subs over here. And this is arguably my most important channel. It's not sports, it's not celebrity gossip. It's not Donald J. Trump. That was on the news all day long today. And it'll be on the news until tonight and until whenever they um, come to a ruling. But this is science. This is arguably one of the most important topics in our society and in the world. But it's not a topic that gets uh, a lot of people don't find this exciting. But that's okay. If you're just coming in, please smash that like button. So this stream is entitled Training in the Biomedical Sciences Revisited, Another Try for T. Riddler. T. Riddler is an individual I see here in the YouTube streets, and he asked me about this. I tried this on Saturday from a hotel room in Novi, Michigan, and the connection, the remote connection was unstable. And when that happens, it's not a good production for you all out there on the YouTube side. So I have a solid connection tonight. I have a hard connection, a stable connection. And so we're going to talk about this. Okay. So this weekend or late last week, I went home or I went to my second home. Those of you who have been following me for a while, you know that Buffalo, New York is my true home. And my second home, I consider it to be Ann Arbor, Michigan. Ann Arbor, Michigan is the home of the University of Michigan. And that's where I became Dr. Dunbar. And I present myself like that here on this platform and actually on all of my platforms, but I don't, in real life, I don't walk around saying, I'm Dr. Dunbar, I'm Dr. Dunbar, I'm Dr. Dunbar. I don't do that. And as I'll describe to you, a lot of professors, even at a world class university like the University of Michigan, a lot of professors don't like to be called doctor. There were some professors who, when I was a student, my graduate advisor was one of them. He wanted me to call him by his first name. And then this last week when I was there, even some of the more seasoned faculty, they told me at this point I could just call them by their first name. So not everyone wants to be called Dr. So and so. But I present myself like that here. Whoever's here in the chat, whoever's here viewing, please let yourselves be known in the chat. That would be helpful. If you have comments or questions as I go through all of this, please feel free to ask questions. If I can't answer them here, I will follow up at some point. Okay. So let's let's go. Well, let's do what I did last week. Last week at the symposium. For those of you who don't know, a symposium is just a meeting. It's a fancy name for a meeting where there are talks and presenters on certain topics. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, right now, haha, he's here, T Riddler. Well, please smash that like button if you haven't. I will try to make this as understandable and dummy proof as possible. Not saying you're a dummy, T Riddler, but this is a science discussion, and not everybody understands what that is or why that's important. Okay, so right now I work in I work in regulatory affairs. If you don't know what regulatory affairs are, don't feel bad. A lot of people don't. But it just so happens that I wrote something about it when I started my blog. This piece is not below in the description box, but I will put it down there for the replay. So I wrote this piece. It's called A Look at STEM, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. What is regulatory science? So there's an actual science, or there's an actual set of disciplines called the regulatory sciences. And this is what the federal government and the state governments do. When you hear regulation or regulatory science, you're using science to make health decisions, to protect the general public from products made by the private sector, whether those are drugs. The picture here is toothpaste. It could be some sort of industrial chemical. It could be a petroleum product. But someone has to look at those products and inquire about their safety and inquire about the safety for the general public. All right. That's what I do right now. The link is right here for those of you watching the stream live. Most professionals, well, not most, all professionals who work in regulatory affairs and regulatory sciences. Okay, this comment here just threw me. Nishemia Ben Yasharal, and that someone is compromised. I'm not sure what that means, sir. You could elaborate on that. Okay, okay. So everyone who works in regulatory science has a science background in something. Okay, uh, so the regulatory science sits on the shoulders of something else. So my background, my initial background, is in the field of pharmacology. If you don't know what that is, don't feel bad. A lot of folks don't know what that is. But once again, I wrote something on that. If you want to read some more about it, I wrote a blog post on what pharmacology is. It's not below in the description box, but it will be. And I will drop the link in the chat right now. What is pharmacology? I will give a brief discussion of that right now. I will give a brief discussion of what this is right now. Okay. Pharmacology, simply put, is the study of drugs. Okay. How do drugs affect living systems? How do drugs affect living organisms? Humans, um, dogs, cats. I don't know if birds, I don't know if there are drugs for birds, but how do drugs affect living systems? What does the drug do once it gets inside the cell? What do drugs do once it gets inside of the person? What does it do? How does it do it? How long does it stay in the body? Does the body transform that drug into something else? That's pharmacology. Okay. Pharmacology is a basic science, which means that it well, there is a clinical side, but there's also a research side, and that's talked about in this blog post. Okay, so this person says the regulatory body that is responsible for ensuring that medication is safe for public consumption. Okay, has failed miserably. Not only that, but the body responsible for the safety of our foods. Okay, this is you're taking this off into another direction. We could talk about that some other time, but that goes beyond the scope of what I want to talk about tonight. Okay, so pharmacology, it's in part a clinical science, but it's also a research science as well. It's a basic science. So then the question is, what is a basic science, Dr. Dunbar? What do you mean by basic research and the basic sciences? If you don't know what that is, that's okay. A lot of folks don't know, but I wrote something on that too. I do a lot of writing, as you can see. This piece is below in the description box. And I wrote these because a lot of the general public in general, in large part, does not know what these things are. So the basic sciences are research disciplines, and basic research is research that is typically in a subject area, and it's asking a question. So you're asking a research question, uh, whether you're in pharmacology or toxicology or immunology or genetics. You're at a workbench asking a question of some sort. And you're adding to the general body of knowledge. You're trying to figure out the unknown. And so a part of pharmacology falls under this umbrella of basic science and basic research. All right, Alonzo has entered the building. Alonzo, thank you for being here. Uh, Engineering Cannabis says, did you see the 14-year-old prodigy that graduated with a PhD in biomedical engineering and is working for Elon on AI? I did not see that, Engineering Cannabis, but thank you for calling that to my attention. Aquateki, thank you for being here. I appreciate the support. I appreciate the support. Okay, so the basic sciences and basic research, you're researching something, you're asking a scientific question or questions, and you are looking to publish on that. And this research, at least the biomedical sciences, this research typically takes place at research institutions like the University of Michigan. That picture right there is the University of Michigan's. Uh, well, the university doesn't have it's an inanimate thing, so it doesn't own it. But that is the medical campus at the University of Michigan. I was just there last weekend. Okay, so there's a hospital there over on the right side, and then as you transition over to the left side, there are tons and tons and tons of research labs on that medical campus. So for biological research, for the biomedical sciences, that research typically takes place at centers like that. Riddler, that's right. That's where the University of Michigan is. Well, its main campus. There's uh, a U of M Dearborn, and there's a University of Michigan at Flint. But the main school, the main campus, is in Ann Arbor. Okay, so the Department of Pharmacology. So I told you what pharmacology is. I told you what basic research is. So last week we went back, and a bunch of us alumni gave talks and met the current students, and we gave talks. We met the current students. We did breakout sessions, and we talked about our careers. We talked about our training. Before I go any further, I want to show you guys something. And this gets back to something I learned since being here on YouTube, and that's that your image your personal image is very, very important. I'm gonna take a risk here. I'm gonna say a name, uh, a very volatile name. Uh, Many of you know that I did do some work with Kevin Samuels, probably about 2 to 3 years before he passed away, and we before he blew up. This is before he blew up. We talked about image, and it turns out that image is more than how you dress. It's more than the hats you put on. It's more than the suit and tie, and it's more than the fragrances you put on. Your image is also what you're putting out in terms of energy, in terms of message. Your image is also how you're perceived by other people, by the public, by potential employers. And so I'm going to show you really quickly the alumni that were invited back last week. I am among them. So you'll see me here. I don't think there's any harm in showing this. You can actually find this online. These were the speakers, myself included, for the Pharmacology and Color Symposium. So I'm there at the bottom, but these are some of my peers. And I thought about this last week when I was there, and I thought about this as I was starting to put this stream together. And these people work in industry, these people work in academia, the people on that flyer, and those are just 5 to 6 of my peers, my professional peers. They work in academia, they work in industry. One gentleman worked in patent law. One gentleman worked for a pharmaceutical company. And so I'm saying this to say that, for my time YouTubing, I was delving into certain areas. Okay. And then I decided to take a lower profile. And the reason I did that was because what I just showed you is that uh, I have a life outside of this digital space, and I have peers, and I have to be mindful of my image. And when you have peers and you have a department you come from, and when you're on a panel with other people, you have to be careful because you're connected to them, they're connected to you, you're connected to your department, and you have to be mindful of the discussions and the people you're connected to online because that can have ramifications for what happens to you in the real world. So I thought about that image. Your image matters. What you get involved with online, that matters, and it has ramifications. Okay, so T. Riddler asked about the training that goes into getting something like a PhD in pharmacology. And you all keep letting me know what you think there in the chat and if you have questions. Okay. So if you can read about this afterwards. I wrote something about this too, and I actually did a stream on this about 2 to 3 years ago. I think I read it. I'm not going to read this verbatim for you now because there isn't time. I've worked a full workday and I don't want to bore you guys, but this is below in case you want to read it. This one was entitled The Story of How I Earned My STEM Degree. Oh, by the way, well, I'll come back to that. I'll come back to that. This piece is below in the description box in case you want to read it. I'm just going to go over it quickly. I lifted this quote from the piece. This is my graduate advisor. He said, "It's my job to prepare you for wherever you go after you leave my lab. When you go into a company, no one is going to tell you if your presentations and writings are sloppy. You won't get promoted and you'll never know why." Okay. That's another I'll add on to that, going back to image. People are looking at your social media. People are looking at what you're doing online. So what you're doing on your social media and what you're doing online, in some instances, that can impact whether you get a position or not. So that's just something I just thought of when I read that. Okay. So this piece is about what I learned. So when I was there in my advisor's lab, I had to learn how to do science, how to do the experiments. Okay. I had to learn. Here's me about 20 years ago. You see no gray hair. I had to learn how to ask questions and how to be inquisitive. And I had to learn how to talk about science and I had to learn how to talk science. And that's significant because the background I come from, for the background I come from, there are no STEM professionals in my family. So I'm the first one. So if you don't come from that culture, you have to be baptized and educated in that culture. So I had to learn how to ask questions. I had to learn how to be inquisitive. I had to learn how to talk about science and think about the science. Okay. I had to see, I had to learn to see and understand my research project from my advisor's eyes, from my mentor's eyes. There's a difference between seeing it from your mentor's eyes and seeing it as a student. As a student, as a trainee, you can't see everything because you don't have the experience. But I had to learn how to see the science and see the arena and see uh, what we were doing from his eyes. And I got there just a little bit before I graduated, but that was part of my journey. I had to learn how to do science in a lab every day versus learning to do it in a classroom. Okay, there's a difference between actually doing research in a research lab, having a project. There's a difference between doing that and studying a book every night. And me and my father actually had that discussion one time. He said, it sounds like you guys are doing some hard studying. And beyond a certain phase, there was no studying. There was doing the research project and trying to complete the research project and doing the experiments and figuring out what worked and what didn't. So it's not the same thing as opening up a book and studying a chapter and taking a test. You're trying to publish data, get your name on papers, and publish data in reputable journals. And I'm going to show you what that is before I wrap this stream up. I had to learn that I just talked about the research was in part a job. So this training was like, it was an apprenticeship where you you follow a master and you study underneath a master, and they may be hard on you and they're trying to beat certain skills and certain knowledge sets and thought processes into you. That's what this was. It was training, it was an apprenticeship, it was learning how to do science, and it was working alongside a master. It was very much, if any of you are familiar with Star Wars, it was very much like Jedi training. Please smash that like button if you're coming in, even if you're just going to hop back out. Please smash that like button. This piece is below in the description box. Okay, we had to learn how to multitask. So to do multiple things at once, project A, project B, project C, and project D. And I and my peers had to learn how to move multiple projects forward all at once. That wasn't easy. Okay, there was a lot of pain involved in that, but it was for good. Yep, Akuteki, exactly. Master and Padawan learner. That's right. That's exactly how that was. Okay. There we had to learn how to compete. I made this analogy last week at the meeting. This was very much like the movie Twister. Who out there has seen the movie Twister, where all the groups were chasing the tornado, and whoever got there and shot footage of the tornado and took the readings first, they were the winners. Well, it's the same thing when you're doing research. The person who makes the finding first, the lab that makes the finding first, they are the winners because you want to publish on that and you're writing grants on that. So you're competing against other labs in other cities across the country and around the world. Uh, and oftentimes you're asking the same question, well, who's going to make the finding first? Hello, Asada. Thank you for stopping through. I appreciate your support. I had to learn. This is a big one. This is a huge one, and it gets back to what I was just talking to you all about regarding image. Yeah, I had to learn how to manage my life outside of the lab because my life outside of the lab was going to impact my life inside of the lab. And I have three examples here. One was a toxic and tumultuous romantic relationship. Okay. And it's a miracle that I finished my doctoral training because I was in a very chaotic and toxic and tumultuous relationship at times that stressed my mind, shredded my mind, balled my mind up into a crumpled piece of paper and throwing it in the trash. I was in a tumultuous relationship, and it came close to compromising my research. And but someone was praying for me because ultimately I finished. So I look back at that experience and it's a miracle that I finished. But the take home is you have to make choices about your life and manage your life and manage who was in your life. And you have to make determinations about whether or not they're helping you or they're hurting you. And if they're hurting you, you have to make decisions. And you have to protect what it is that you're doing. That's something that I had to learn there. Even when your feelings are involved, sometimes you have to learn to let go and go your own way. And my duties in the lab were so what's the word I'm looking for? I had a lot of duties in this person's lab. And with me being compromised, I could have tanked the lab. I could have tanked and ruined the research in that lab. So you have to learn how to manage yourself outside of the lab in the context of romantic relationships, but also your friends and your buddies. Because there were two instances here. This is in this piece. This piece is below in the description box. There are two pieces. I mean, there are two experiences where two buddies on separate occasions almost we almost got into some violent situations because of things that they did and choices they made. So there are you have to manage your life outside of uh, your research lab and outside of your work, and that's not obvious. And coming from the community that I come from and coming from our culture, there are challenges. Maybe you can't go, or maybe you shouldn't go to the places you used to go when you were younger. Maybe you shouldn't hang out with the people you hung out with when you were younger. Maybe there are relatives who you can't hang out with anymore because they might put you in compromised situations. So I try to capture all that in this piece. This piece is below in the description box if you want to read it in depth. That training, I don't know if any of you have ever heard the parable by Lao Tzu, but that training was very much this: give a man fish, and you'll feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you will feed him for a lifetime. This training, in addition to all the technical skills, all the scientific concepts, it was teaching us how to fish for a lifetime. Okay. This is below in the description box. I'm going to show you guys really quickly and as concisely as possible what I worked on, the project I worked on when I was there as a graduate student. Okay. Please keep letting me know what you think there in the chat. Please ask any questions if you have any questions. Okay. So, and me and my graduate advisor were talking about this last week, just last week. So, my graduate advisor works on this protein. Some of you have seen this picture, this ribbon diagram before. This is an enzyme. It's called neuronal nitric oxide synthase. It is a homodimer. That means it has two equal parts, two equivalent parts. If you look at this picture here, you see on each side, the yellow side and the purple side, there are two gray things, gray pieces. That is a heme. That's called a heme. Who knows what a heme is? Who knows what a heme group is? Who knows what a heme group is? I'm gonna throw you guys a bone. I don't have a picture of. I don't think I have a picture of heme. Actually, I do. Oh, got too many pictures in here. Hold on. We'll get rid of Lawrence Otis Graham. If you haven't, please smash that like button. And I'm going to check to see if anyone knows what hemoglobin is. We should all know what hemoglobin is. We'll get rid of the second Lawrence Otis Graham picture. What is hemoglobin? I'll pull up one more slide here. Everyone, just bear with me. Dead space is not good during a live stream. Here we go. Darn, I thought I. All right, all right. Keep commenting. I appreciate that. Let me look at some of your well thought out comments here. Hemoglobin. Yep, something to do with blood. It's blood related. Hemoglobin is part of red blood cells. It's a protein. That's right. So this is a ribbon diagram of hemoglobin. It's a pretty picture. Okay, hemoglobin is a it's the protein in our red blood cells. For completeness, I need to show that picture too. Give me a second. All right, where are we? We're at 42 minutes. Time flies. Okay, your red blood cells travel your circulatory system. Okay, they go to the lungs to release carbon dioxide, and they go to the lungs to uh, take up oxygen, molecular oxygen, because the cells in our body require molecular oxygen. And the heart is the pump, which pumps the blood all over the body and then back to the lungs and then away from the lungs. That might not be the best, the most concise way to say that, but that's essentially what happens. So these are our red blood cells. Our red blood cells contain hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a tetramer. That means it has four equivalent parts, and each of those parts has a heme group. So if you look at the center there, that is an iron atom, and it is surrounded by that complex network of hydrocarbons and nitrogens. That iron center allows the hemoglobin to bind the oxygen. Okay, that's what it does for hemoglobin. For our enzyme, nitric oxide synthase, neuronal nitric oxide synthase, that heme group allows that enzyme to carry out this reaction. Okay, so that enzyme takes L-arginine and catalyzes it to nitric oxide and L-citrulline, and that nitric oxide acts as a signaling molecule. Okay, so my graduate advisor was interested in this enzyme, nitric oxide synthase. He was interested in how different drugs interact with the protein. Okay, so arginine is its natural substrate. Some drugs inhibit the enzyme, some drugs stabilize the enzyme, and some drugs targeted the enzyme itself for proteolysis and degradation. All right. So, for those of you who don't know, all of the cells in your body have something called a protease, or they have multiple proteases. And there are different kinds of proteases. Proteases cleave and digest proteins. Okay. So my graduate advisor was interested in how drugs could target this protein, this enzyme for proteolysis by this protease. That was one of the projects, that was one of the questions that he asked in his lab and in his research. And I worked on that. That was my thesis. So I have a comment here. T. Riddler says, "Why does it form those coils?" Okay, T. Riddler, there's a video in my library talking about protein structure. All right. So what I will say now about this is that there are. I'm always hesitant to give the number without looking it up first and fact checking myself on the front end. 20 amino acids. I think there's about 20 amino acids Let me just look it up real quick. Twenty to 22. There are 20 to 22 amino acids. Those are the building blocks for proteins. So T Riddler, so each of those amino acids has different properties. There are different groups of them. And depending upon the way those amino acids are strung together in long chains, based upon their chemical properties, they're going to orient in a certain way to form a three-dimensional structure. That's why, and that's what the ribbon diagram it represents. If you look at this one, I told you guys this was a tetramer, so it has four identical parts. Okay, those ribbons represent, I believe those are alpha helices, and other parts are beta sheets. But it all depends on which amino acids are strung together and what the chemical properties of those amino acids are. And when the chain is complete, based upon those chemical properties, the protein forms a three-dimensional structure. So that's the quick answer to that. But there's a video in my library talking about that. T Riddler, that's right. Protein folding. Okay. So when you do research, the important thing is to publish. So from my graduate advisor's lab, all of this is online. So you can look this up. All of this is online. So my graduate advisor, in his lab, I was able to get 2 first author papers out. Let me, okay. This is my first author paper. This was published in the journal Molecular Pharmacology. It's called Ubiquitination and Degradation of Neuronal Nitric Oxide Synthase in Vitro. Dimer stabilization protects the enzyme from proteolysis. I'm not going to get into all this right now. I attempted to present some of this about 2 years ago. What the trick is not losing people. Okay. And on YouTube, you have to, one of the keys is entertaining and holding your audience's attention. I want to present some of this. I want to present the data, but I don't want to lose everybody. So suffice it to say, one of the goals for doing research, being a grad student, getting your biomedical sciences training, part of that training is publishing in a reputable journal. So I'm just going to scroll through this really, really quickly so you can see it. This is a first author primary paper / reference. There's the abstract, there's the introduction. This gets into all the methods that we used. And then you go into the results. And there, I know those figures pretty well. I generated that data myself. Okay, that's a Western blot there in figure 1. And then the other figures are quantifications of Western blots. That was my primary technique for this paper. Okay, I'm just scrolling through this really, really quickly. And then that final figure, figure 7, that final figure is what we call the absorption spectra for heme. I just showed you what heme was. Heme, when it's properly coordinated in the active site of an enzyme, a P450, we call it a P450, it gives off a very unique absorbance spectra at 450 nanometers. So that's what that is. Again, I'm skipping over all this. I'm not trying to go through all of it. This is a part of the training, T Riddler. I'm going to show you my second first author paper. This is my second first author paper. It's called Tetrahydrobiopterin Protects Against Guanabenzene Mediated Inhibition of Neuronal Nitric Oxide Synthase in Vitro and in Vivo. Same deal. There's an abstract, which is basically the summary, the 30,000-foot look at the paper. There's the introduction, the methods used, and then the results. This paper was more about the activity and the catalysis of the enzyme and the fate of the cofactors that the enzyme needed versus degradation of the enzyme. But it's all one story. So I'm just going to scroll through these figures so you all can see. All right. This one had 8 figures. Anytime you see error bars like this on data, that typically means that those were done in replicates. So the experiment was done for statistical significance. The experiment had to be done 3 times so you can generate statistical significance. All right. So that's 8 figures. This was a lot of experiments. This was a lot of work. That's the bottom line. This was a lot of work, a lot of focus, a lot of time in the lab, a lot of time working on this project, a lot of time nurturing this project, a lot of time seeing this project through to completion. And so T Riddler, this is a major part of your training, a person's training in the biomedical sciences. You have a research project. Your job is to work on that project, grow that project, and then publish on that project. All right. T Riddler asks, are you still required to publish in your current occupation? In the regulatory sector, not so much. You might, but what you're doing in the regulatory sector is you are evaluating on the government side, you're evaluating the safety of the product. So the company, whether it's a pharmaceutical company, whether or not it's a chemical company or some other company, they're performing the experiments. You're using your scientific expertise to interpret that data using government laws and statutes, and you're trying to determine how safe the product is. Okay. So I'm gonna wrap this up soon. I'm at 55 minutes. At last week's meeting, I as I was putting together my talk for last week's meeting, I had a light bulb. I had an epiphany, and it's something that I knew all along, but it goes back to what something T Riddler says. Let me find T Riddler's comment here. T Riddler says, oftentimes we think we can separate our academic/professional lives from our social lives, but chaos in one certainly affects the other. The epiphany I came to, and what I shared with the students in the audience, was this. Science is a culture, a craft, and a world all its own, and not one well understood by the general public. I'm going to read that again. Science is a culture, a craft, and a world all its own, and not one well understood by the general public. So this is why individuals like Carl Sagan were so important, because part of his mission was to get the word about science out to the general public so people could understand. because people don't understand a lot of this, whether it's pharmacology, whether it's astronomy, whether it's AI, whether it's engineering. Many people in the general public don't understand. So, and I saw it last week at dinner on Thursday. Me and my graduate advisor, who in a lot of ways was like a surrogate father, we spent a good time at dinner just talking about this, just talking about the enzyme, specifically talking about how the experiments that they're doing to figure out how the enzyme assembles and how the heme itself properly orients in the active site. We were sitting and talking about that. We were sitting and talking about the molecular chaperones, the client proteins involved in that. And I saw it right there. That's a culture that just sitting and thinking and talking about that with someone else. You can only do that with certain people. And the general public, they don't understand. They don't understand writing papers like this and the amount of time that one would have to spend in a research lab to do these experiments and to generate this data and to publish this data. It's a whole nother world. And I'll tell you guys this as well. That that was part of my journey. And for I think for people from the Black community where there aren't a lot of sciences, there aren't a lot of scientists, that's part of the journey is launching off into that world and existing in that world and being okay in that world and being different and feeling okay that you're different and feeling okay that you're not a part of the group. Now, one of the challenges is once you start learning all this stuff, is figuring out how to relate back to the group. It's figuring out how to relate to the community you come from and how to relate to your relatives because you can get to talking about because you can't talk to them about these things, and if you do, you have to keep it general and you have to know that you're going to lose them. You may lose them at some point. So again, it's let me pull that slide up again. Science is a culture, a craft, and a world all its own, and one that is not well understood by the general public. I think I would rewrite that last part, and it should say, and one that is not well understood by the general public. And so you people might wonder, it might be your significant other, it might be your buddy, it might be your best friend who says, "Hey man, it's a Friday night. Let's go to the club. Let's do this, let's do that." Well, I can't do that. I can only come for a little while because I have these experiments running and I have to go back into the lab on a Saturday morning, or the animals are ready. They're going to be ready on Sunday. So I can't go to church. I can't go to the music festival or whatever. I have to go into the lab on Sunday and work on these experiments because the cells are ready, because the animals are ready, and we're looking to publish this paper and we're looking to renew this grant. That's a completely different mindset than your 9 to 5 working class person or your 9 to 5 working class people. Okay. So I don't know. So T Riddler or whoever is interested in this, I hope I've kind of distilled this out for you in a way that you can understand it and think about it and kind of comprehend what all is involved in this. For the professors who work at the University of Michigan and places like that. So all this is the picture of a research lab. This when you are a student and if you choose a career in academia or even at a drug company, I showed this in an earlier stream. A lab like this becomes your home. This becomes your second home. You're there working at a workbench, generating data, hopefully data you could publish in a paper. This becomes your home. This is a distinct world. This is a distinct culture. Okay. And not a lot of people know what this is or that this exists. But this is where in places like that, this is where your drugs come from. This is where your medications come from. This is where your I think it's safe to say it now. Someone else mentioned it in the chat earlier. This is where your vaccines come from. Places like this, research labs. I'm going to end with one thing, T. Riddler. You're welcome. I hope you got something out of this, and I can spend hours talking about this, and I can expound upon this some more. But what what skills do you get from this type of training? So before I jump into that, I told the students last week when I was there, the professors who work at the University of Michigan or Harvard or Yale or MIT, when they're coming up with these research ideas and they're writing these grants, think about shows like if any of you watch the History Channel, think about the men who built America. Think about there's another show on right now that I really enjoy called The Food That Built America. These are people sitting and thinking about, well, in the show, people are thinking about how to make a better pizza and how to how to make a sub, how to invent Subway, how to make the best sandwich, the Big Mac, the Whopper, whatever Dave's sandwich is, or how to make the better pizza, or how to make the better sub, or how to make the better cookie. That's innovation. Those people were innovators, and the men who built America, those were innovators. The people who work at these research institutions and run these labs, those are innovators as well. But they're unlocking the secrets to nature and life. So it's a little bit different. So, what are the skill sets? What do you learn when you pursue this type of training? Whether you stay at the University of Michigan, or whether you go into the government, or whether you go into the private sector, what skills do you take away from that? Well, there are certain transferable skills that you take away from that type of training. And that's actually a pretty prevalent term. When I wrote this essay, I didn't realize that it was such a prevalent term, the transferable skills. So when you work in the biomedical sciences and you do a PhD there and you do your doctoral training there are some core things that you learn. You learn critical thinking slash problem solving skills. You learn the ability to multitask, to organize, and to coordinate multiple projects at one time. You learn the ability to write clearly. You learn the ability to speak and present clearly. So, right there, that one, depending upon the community you come from, that right there can cause a clash. And a young man last week actually asked me about code switching. Everyone in the chat knows what code switching is. Well, you have to code switch at work, around your peers from other ethnic groups, but you also have to code switch when you go back to your own community, right? So, speaking articulately, using the King's English will cause some people to look at you strange. Maybe some people in your family, maybe some people from your street, maybe some people from that bar or that club that you used to frequent. But in this arena, speaking clearly and speaking articulately, those are important. So the ability to work on teams, and then finally, the ability to adapt and understand new systems or to learn new things or to anticipate the future. These are all critical transferable skills that you learn from this type of training. And with that, I'm just over an hour. I have to go into the office tomorrow. So I'm going to wrap this up. So, Mr. T. Riddler, you just thank me for that. If there's more you want to hear about, if there's something, and when I'm done with this stream, I'll probably be making my dinner or getting ready to lay down, and I'll say, you know what, I didn't say this, or I didn't say that, or I didn't say that, or I didn't say that. So, but I hope that you got something out of this. So, everyone, thank you for hanging out here. I try to keep it as digestible and understandable as possible. I might revisit my thesis chapters in the future. But again, the trick is distilling that down so people can understand it. Now, the good thing about last week is I did reveal to people that I do have the STEM channel. So I know that a few peers did say, or they did express an interest in coming and doing a Q&A here. So look for some interviews here from some of my peers from Michigan and other places. And I'm going to end with this. For those of you who came on late, image. Think about your image in these digital spaces. Be careful. Always be thinking about your image. These are some of my peers. I had not seen a lot of them recently, but we are connected by the school, by the department, by the science, and so yeah, I need to be careful about the things I'm talking about here online and the uh, the, the the discussions I'm in and who I'm connected to here, because whoever I'm connected to here can impact who I'm connected to out here in the real world. So everyone protect your image. An image is more than the hat, the fragrance, the suit, and a tie. The image is how you portray yourself and also who you're associated with. Not saying who I was associated with before is bad, but I'm just saying you just have to be careful. All right. Everyone, most of you know that I have a newsletter. Well, you just saw firsthand how much writing I've done. I do a lot of writing. And if you haven't, please consider signing up for my newsletter. And Aquateki, I appreciate your support. I was thinking I'm gonna have to come up with something of special. You've always been very generous in terms of donating to the channel. You always watch, so I need to come up with a special Aquateki something, a quick video, a picture, a greeting, or something for your continuous support. Your avatar looks like a transformer, so maybe, well, let me see what my creative juices can come up with, but I need to acknowledge you in some way. So my newsletter, please consider joining my newsletter. The link, this link is below in the description box. It's a 2-paragraph greeting. You just click that subscribe button, and it takes you there, and you sign up. And it's that simple. So with that, everyone, if you're new, please consider liking this stream. Smash the like button. Please consider subscribing. I'm trying to grow the channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you want to donate something, my Cash App and PayPal are below. With that, I'm going to wrap up. Until the next one, everyone stay safe out there. I hope the rest of your week goes smooth. I might try to squeeze another one in at the end of the week. I don't know yet, but you'll get a notification if I do. So with that, as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Always try to do your best. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.